Hey everyone, welcome to the Morning Grind podcast presented by rotogrinders.com. I'm your host, Stevie TPFL. It's June 23rd. It's Thursday. We have 4 early games, 5 late games. It's an interesting slate on both the morning and the late. We're going to break it down both ways here for you on the Morning Grind today. And I got my old running partner here from Florida with me today. Oh, wait, you're not in Florida anymore. How you doing, Dean?
I'm not in Florida, no. I went from Florida to Las Vegas, and now I'm in South Kakalaki, Charleston, South Carolina.
So when I come to Charleston, can I crash on your couch?
Yeah, I have a spare bedroom if you want that.
All right. Now we're getting somewhere, Dean.
Fresh sheets and everything.
Oh, hey, you're going to wash the sheets for me.
I didn't say anything about washing.
Okay, just fresh.
Yeah, I guess fresh kind of implies washing. You're right. Okay,
spray some Febreze on it.
There you go. That's the single guy's trick, right?
That's right. If you guys haven't checked out our sponsor site, fantasydraft.com, make sure you guys see over there, check them out. A little bit of action here for the early slate, a lot of action here for the late slate. They got some PGA stuff up. It's just a great site to jump on. A lot of tweets about it. I was a little MIA on Wednesday, so if you guys have any questions on Thursday, right back to the Twitter machine, and I'll answer those questions for you. If you're signing up for the first time, make sure you guys support the podcast by using promo code GRINDERS, and that way you get incentives here at Roto Grinders for free for a year, and you get a 100% deposit bonus up to $600. Dean, we're going to tackle this 4-game early slate first. We're going to start with San Francisco at Pittsburgh. Jonathan Neitz, Albert Suarez. Neitz here, probably not a guy we're going to look at. Suarez, Pittsburgh's been a little cold, and Marte's a guy that's dealing with injury. Any thoughts here on these pitchers?
No, I mean, if Suarez was like super, super cheap, like a punt, like as an SP2 on a site like maybe a site like Draft or on a site like even like a site like DK, maybe you consider it. It's pretty clear. I'm not sure as far as chopping it down by the slate. Let's see. Colorado plays later tonight, and Boston plays the afternoon. So there you go. So if you're not playing the all-day slate, the early slate you want to get as many Boston bats and spoiler alert, big game James Shields. I don't know the most misleading name in the history of nicknames. He's pitching tonight or tomorrow, and he should get shellacked by Boston. So you're going to want to find a cheap pitcher to roster as many Red Sox as possible. I don't think Suarez is that guy. He's a bullpen arm. He's not very good. Pittsburgh, I understand it's a pitcher's ballpark, but this is like mostly just a stay-away game. It feels like a 3-2, 4-3 kind of game. Nice is terribly pedestrian, not a high K rate. We know San Francisco versus lefties, they're not very good, but they don't strike out either. They're kind of Braves-esque to some degree, but a little bit peskier, a little bit more imposing. It is a ballpark upgrade for them in Pittsburgh, because basically anything outside of San Francisco is an upgrade. But really no pitcher for me, not a lot of upside. Well, we're going to be saying that a lot, though, because a lot of the pitchers today are pretty gross, so it is relative to the slate. But you asked me about the pitchers, and I'm not really interested. If you force me, maybe Neitz if it gets me all the Boston bats.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to pitch either one of these guys, even if it gets me the Boston bats. I think I'm going to look elsewhere. Now, looking at the hitters here, we'll start with the visiting team Giants. Like you said, they get a little bit of a ballpark upgrade. Love Brandon Crawford and Brandon Belt against lefties, and Neitz is not a guy that I'm really scared, to use left-handed bats against. I think they're really interesting tournament options.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got to relegate them to tournaments. Brandon Belt at 4.1K, like on FanDuel, fully priced. Doesn't make any sense for a cash game build. Crawford hits lefties just fine at 3.1K. That's pretty fair. He jumps all around in the lineup, so it's definitely worth noting where he pops up in the lineup. Obviously, the higher, the more appealing. I suppose, but cash game, probably not.
You got to like Posey if you can fit him in, right?
Yeah, for sure. 3.8K versus the lefty. Again, it's going to be tough because my big bat spend on the early slate is probably going to be relegated to Boston. We'll talk about that shortly. But certainly if you have the funds, if you're going a different route, by all means, Posey is, most likely to be your top catcher on the early slate.
Now, looking at the other side here, Pittsburgh, anybody that really stands out to you here against Suarez?
Polanco. I think Polanco's too cheap, 3.4K. That's a very fair price against Suarez. And that's the one bat. If I'm going to roster somebody, you're going to force me to roster one guy in this game, it's Gregory Polanco.
Yeah, I don't mind JSO where you don't have to play him at first base. So, for instance, fantasy draft, you get technically you could have up to 5 infielders if you really wanted to. I think Jaso in the leadoff spot's in a good spot here, but I think I'm with you on Polanco. If Marte's out and Matt Joyce gets the start, he's pretty cheap as well. I think you could look at him as well.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I those guys, they just don't get excited about the platoon guys. Joyce is obviously if a lefty comes in, there's a chance he gets swapped out. If a lefty comes in, there's a chance Jaso gets swapped out as well. And like you said, sure, in a site where it's not taking up a first base spot, I guess you can roster Jaso, but there's certainly an opportunity cost, and Jaso's not a guy that has a high upside day in and day out. So probably wouldn't roster those guys, but I understand what you're suggesting as far as the matchup being pretty fair.
Any other bats here stand out for you on either side?
I mean, McCutchen is still really cheap, but I've said this before. If Stanton wasn't as terrible he is right now, people would be talking about how bad McCutchen is. Like, McCutchen has a big thank you to Stanton because he's been awful. We're just not even talking about it because we're talking about Stanton first. The price is interesting. The matchup is fine. But I mean, I suspect I'm not a doctor. I'm not a Twitter doctor, but I feel like he's hurt.
Yeah, I've been saying that for the last week or so. I feel like McCutchen's playing hurt as well. And you never thought we'd see the day that we had McCutchen and Stanton priced so cheap on pretty much every site. But it is that time. But I just don't know if I could do it. Moving on, Seattle at Detroit, Sampson against Norris. Daniel Norris, he was the main ingredient in the David Price deal from Detroit to Toronto. Daniel Norris, a guy that he had a lot of swings last year, up and down, battling cancer, all kinds of stuff. Hit a home run and I think did something to his oblique and went to the DL last year. Like, Daniel Norris had so many ups and downs, but when it's all said and done, he's a lefty with mid rotation kind of stuff. Doesn't really stand out to me. I feel like we can look at maybe Nelson Cruz and Gutierrez against him. Yeah,
I love the boomstick. The other thing about Daniel Norris, allegedly he lives in a van down by the river. I'm not sure if you're aware of that story.
I actually knew that too.
He was beat up in AAA, actually. Recently he's been better of late. And like you said, he's promising. He's a big prospect to some degree. Hasn't exactly panned out. Maybe it's taken a little bit longer than expected. And maybe he'll be good in a couple of years. Maybe he'll be a late bloomer, but I'm not rolling him out against Seattle. I know Seattle is better against righties, but they do have the lefty mashers and Gutierrez, and of course the boomstick and Nelson Cruz. I'm not right. And again, there's no real discount on him. It's not like he's incredibly cheap, like ridiculously cheap, where I can say I'm going to punt this guy. He's like a mid-tier price. I'm not going to pay that? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, he has prospect behind his name, and people, I think that's why we're seeing him priced so high. Adrian Sampson on the other side of this game, this guy doesn't grade out as well. He looked okay, I would guess. 4 earned runs, 8 hits, 4 innings pitched in his debut. He's a guy that's kind of just filling in for Wade Miley. Right when Wade Miley comes back, this guy's going straight back down to AAA. We can definitely look at some Detroit bats here against him.
Yeah, I think the pivot off Boston, like if you don't want to go with the chalk, it's going to be Detroit picking on Sampson. And I know it's all a bunch of ready, I'm ready, but Miggy can smash anybody. V-Mart, of course. Castellano has plenty of power. J Up is heating up. Even Steven Moya, he's got plenty of power too, and he's still super cheap. Kinsler at the top of the order. Like, pretty much all the Tigers are in play and worth a look, to varying degrees, because I don't think Sampson's very good.
Yeah, I don't think he is either. I was going to say, if you wanted to pivot off Boston in this early slate, this is the game to do it. Both sides here, take the righties for Seattle and load up on just about any bat here for Detroit. Let's talk bats, though. I mentioned on Seattle that I like Gutierrez and Nelson Cruz. I'm sure you're with me there. Anybody else that you like here?
Sometimes, on occasion, we get Ketel Marte to lead off, and shortstop position's pretty hard to satisfy, especially on a short slate, especially if you're playing just the early slate. If we're talking about 4 or 5 games, of course, we'll talk about Xander Bogaerts shortly. But if you can't splurge for him, or if you can't spring up for a guy like Nunez on the Twins, I don't mind Marte as a full punt on the road against Daniel Norris, who's not good, and at least he's not been good, and a bullpen for Detroit that's pretty awful as well. When you're on the road, you're guaranteed 9 innings. If things are going well, you should grab 5 ABs, and I just like the math there as far as the cost per at bat.
Yep, I don't hate it. on a site like FanDuel and DraftKings, you got to play a catcher. You don't on draft. What's your thoughts here on Chris Iannetta?
Sure, I suppose. Yeah, I guess he's interesting. He's he's a boom buster. He's not a guy that's gonna, get you 3 singles. He's either gonna bang one out or probably strike out 3 times, something like that. I would also throw out the platoon for Seattle. It's been really successful this year as far as their first base platoon with Adam Lind, they roll him out pretty much predominantly versus the right-handers, but versus the left-hander, Dae-Ho Lee is definitely worth a look as well as far as a pretty cheap source of power. Another guy who's a bit boom busty, but I don't mind him for tournaments at all.
Yeah, one of my favorite tournament plays this season has been Lee. Looking at Detroit, man, I really like the 1 through 6. If Moya is in that 6th spot, coming off a 2 home run game, super cheap, I think he's definitely a guy we can look at.
Yeah, and I imagine that the price is still pretty suppressed in most spots. Last I saw, he's like 2.3, 2.4 or so on FanDuel. On DK, I think he was like 2.5, some of that area. I'm not sure. What do you have him on draft? I imagine he's pretty cheap there as well. So plenty of power, and he's a guy. He's not just somebody that kind of came out of nowhere. He's a prospect as well, and the power is expected. So you're going to get a lot of strikeouts as well, a lot of outs as well. But who cares? Just as long as you get that homer, you're good to go.
Yeah, I love these young guys. Like we've seen it a lot with Jock Peterson last year. Strikeout or home runs. Those are perfect tournament plays. Moya's price tag in this matchup, I feel like he's going to be pretty popular in cash games as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's a way to get access to bigger bats. And 2.4K, I'm looking at it right now on FanDuel. That's just too cheap for the guy. He's going to be buried in the lineup. There's a chance he only gets 3 ABs if, say, Detroit wins 4-2 and they don't get the 9th inning. But just the upside there is nice. And it's not so much what he does, it's what he allows you to do with other bats, other guys you actually really want. But speaking of guys that just the young guys that are boom bust that swing for the fences, something tells me that you played a lot of Joey Gallo last year. Is that true or false?
That is very, very true.
I just felt like that was a thing for you.
Very, very true, Dean. Very, very true. I still think he grades out as a really good power hitter in baseball. It just needs to work on the strikeouts as well.
Wait for it to get like 98, 97, 99 degrees in Texas and they call up Gallo. That'll be fun.
Yeah, please do that. And, like, nobody talk about him. Even though I'll probably talk about him. All right, so, looking at Detroit here, I don't ever play Victor Martinez. And I feel like as a tournament player, he's like one of the worst tournament players out there because it seems like every, 3 or 4 games, it might even be like every 6 or 7 games, he'll hit that 1 home run, but people play him like every day. So I want to get your cash perspective on Victor Martinez.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great cash game play because his price tends not to go up very, very high. Just staring at it right now, I have FanDuel open. It's 3.1K. That is perfectly fine for a cash game play. That's basically less than the average cost of your hitter. And, a lot of people like the punt catcher, and I understand that because the opportunity cost is generally not too high. But if I can get a solid hitter in a solid spot versus a mediocre pitcher in a nice lineup, a lineup that I expect to score a lot of runs today, hitting 4th, I assume, yeah, it's a great play. And I understand your thought process for tournaments because I'd imagine he's probably day in and day out 20, 25% or so, depending on the slate. And, of course, on a 5-game slate, he's going to be super popular in tournaments everywhere today.
The only time I play him is when he's going to hit from the right side against the lefties. The only time I play Victor Martinez. Justin Upton hits in 9 of his last 10 games. Is Justin Upton back?
I mean, he was hearing rumors that he was like the league's second best Upton, and I guess he's like now he's got an answer. The artist formerly known as BJ is like dethroned him. But yeah, I mean he's we always know his power is absurd. He's another guy. He's an old school guy. He's a throwback to strikeout or home run as well. I think he's probably his K rate is about as high as anybody in the league this year. But when he runs into one, he absolutely smashes it and has more power than just about anybody. And the price is not adjusted to his recent hotness. What is that, 3.1K on FanDuel? Again, that's just too cheap. And, again, the Tigers, it's very easy to play them. That's just kind of staring at it. It's like there's nobody that's you really have to splurge and pay up for. Miggy, of course, sure. But otherwise, you're pretty much good to go with all the other parts. Castellanos is 3.6K. Pretty fair. You don't have to force that one. But, again, if you're stacking Detroit, I don't mind it. But, yeah, the Tigers are definitely in play today.
I feel like Miggy's a great pivot off of David Ortiz. Everybody's going to pay up for David Ortiz. I feel like Miggy's a good pivot. Kinsler's in play. Castellanos is in play. Detroit's in play today. Good matchup here for him. Philadelphia at Minnesota. Jared Eichhoff, Ricky Nolasco. Oh, man, dare I say that I'm actually interested in Jared Eichhoff here.
Jared Eichhoff, strikeout rate versus lefties, 18%. Strikeout rate versus righties, just under 24%. The Twins, as a team, they are in the bottom third of strikeouts when it comes to facing right-handers. There is some K upside. We have seen the Twins come alive of late. Their bats have definitely woke up. I think Eichhoff is interesting. I think he's interesting. I can't trust him necessarily in a cash game. I don't really know if it's a cash game slate, to be honest, if we're just kind of talking about cash games. But he is one of the best pitchers in the slate. And then on the other side, Ricky Nolasco is not as awful as you want to think he is. Like, I mean, the generic you, I don't know you specifically. I'm not really sure your thoughts on him. But Nolasco's not been as terrible as the name suggests.
Nolasco sucks.
I'm not saying he's good. That was not a rousing endorsement.
Yeah. All right. So I find both these pitchers interesting. And, when I was breaking down the slate here before we jumped on, Eichhoff, always a guy that I'm interested in. I feel like he's a good young arm, always gives some upside and neutralizes right-handed bats. And when we look at, Minnesota as a team, they got a couple lefties in that lineup that you got to worry about. But I feel like he's interesting. And then Nolasco, like you said, dare I say, Nolasco, he's not really getting hit hard. Outside of the hard contact rate, he's not giving up a lot of home runs. The swinging strike rate is solid. The ground ball rate is solid. It's a Philadelphia team that doesn't hit pitchers hard anyway. I feel like you can use either one of these guys as an SP2.
Yeah, and just Vegas. Have you seen the Vegas line yet? What would you guess this line is? Because Eichhoff's a better pitcher than Nolasco. But Minnesota's a minus 150 favorite right now.
8? Is it an 8?
8.5. 8.5. But minus 150. Minus 150. That's pretty bold, I think, for Nolasco. When was the last time he was minus 150 versus anybody?
Never in his life.
Back to his Marlin days, man. He was hit and miss in the Marlins too. As a Marlins fan, I definitely remember some good times, but some bad times as well. But that's an interesting line.
Yeah, the one thing that I will always say about Nolasco is it always has seemed that his SIERA and XFIP are much lower than his ERA, even dating back to the Marlins days. So he does have that going for him, I guess. Yeah. I'm trying, it's a 4-game slate where I'm trying to sell a second pitcher that I'm trying to be comfortable with.
Well, because like you said, it's we're talking about the early slate just specifically. We're talking about 4 games. We're talking about 8 pitchers. You got to pick 2 of the 8. You have to roster 25% of these guys. That's just what the math says. And we've already talked about, the dude that has the van down by the river, Norris. Sampson, we're not going to play. I don't think we're going to play Suarez, Nice. That's kind of why I said, well, maybe Nice, maybe, because who else are you going to roster? You can't just pass. You have to submit a legit roster. So I think you're right. I think Nolasco is in the maybe column.
I think so as well. Let's talk bats in this game. Anything stand out to you here for Philadelphia against Nolasco?
Not really. I don't get enthused about Philadelphia. I mean, Herrera's all right, I suppose. I guess he's worth a look. But Ryan Howard is just dreadful. Tommy Joseph has some power, so sure, I suppose. Down the left field line in Minnesota, as far as righty power, people think of Minnesota as a pitcher's ballpark, but it's actually pretty positive for home runs if you pull the ball down the line. That's why Dozier on the other side, we'll talk about him in a second as well. Dozier, if he yanks one, that's definitely where he gets a lot of his home runs. Same thing with Plouffe. I can't play Ryan Howard. Maikel Franco, he had that wonky injury, but I guess he's fine. He broke out the other day with a 4 for 5. I don't know if it's a big enough sample size for you or not, but I guess he's okay, and he's pretty cheap. So I guess Franco is somewhat interesting. And Joseph has some power, so maybe, but it's hard for me to get enthused about really anybody in Philadelphia.
Yeah, one-off plays and Franco or Joseph I can get behind. Nolasco, a guy that he does give up a lot of hard contact to righties, really high WOBA to righties as well. So it'd be one of those 2 righties as a one-off, and it would be more of probably a fantasy draft play for Joseph because I don't want to play him at first base on FanDuel or DraftKings, but Franco, I don't mind him as a one-off. On FanDuel, he's 2,600, gives you the power, the power upside as a cheap play. And really, third base is a position where, nothing really is going to be, locked in the sand here.
Yeah, I'm with you. And on the other side, as far as Minnesota, I mean, I don't really know how they're doing. Robbie Grossman, He's been all right. I don't think I've rostered him yet. Maybe it's the name I'm just turned off by, but I don't get enthused. Joe Mauer is another guy I very, very rarely ever roster. For the one-off dongs, Plouffe and Dozier. Park's in a massive funk, and if you want to roster Park, you're probably doing it to lefty, so don't play him. My favorite guy in Minnesota would be Nunez if you're going to roster somebody.
No love for my boy Max Kepler, huh?
No. Sell me on Max Kepler.
He has hits in 9 of his last 10 games. I love hot hitters, so I don't mind him.
All right, fair enough.
I think he can swipe some bags as well.
I like the bags. I appreciate the bags.
Yeah, I say that, and he has 1 stolen base over the last 10 days. But anyway, I feel like he's a guy that just another outfielder that would be low owned. That's where my tournament head is always at.
Possible Jack in a Bag candidate? Is that what you're suggesting?
I don't know. Not the greatest ballpark for lefties.
No, it's really not. Maybe inside. How about an inside of Parker? Is that possible?
I probably wouldn't give him that either, Dean. I'm gonna say I'm shooting for a couple doubles here.
All right, I was trying to bail you out. I was throwing you an anchor, but fair enough. I get it.
Yeah, I won't live by that one. Chicago White Sox, Boston Red Sox, the Sox taking on the Sox. Rick Porcello, James Shields. It's a slate where Rick Porcello has to be your SP1, right?
Well, I mean, you don't ever want to just assume and lock in a W, but the W feels very, very likely against James Shields. Who could have foresaw this? James Shields pitching absolutely horrific and terrible, getting pummeled and pulverized and taking yard every other game in San Diego, pitcher's ballpark, moves out of the National League into the American League into a hitter's ballpark, and guess this, he gets shellacked every single time. Like, I did not see that. I mean, really, what are they doing in Chicago? I have no idea. But now he's in Boston, and in Boston, we know it's just one of the most efficient lineups in all of baseball, one of the scariest lineups in all of baseball. And and wonky things happen. It's baseball. There can be 4 line drives, hit to the first baseman. There can be every hard hit ball can go right to the fielders. But I have a really hard time envisioning Shields just not, getting smacked around tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm with you. Rick Porcello, a guy that, he started off the season really strong. He struggled a little bit here lately. I still don't think he's going to go out and throw a complete game shutout, but 6 innings, a few runs, some hits here, and the win. I just really think he picks up the win, which is always nice on FanDuel.
Yeah, he's fine. Porcello's just nothing sexy about him. He's probably going to go 6, maybe 7. He's not going to have a clean sheet. He'll go up a run or two. Somebody on the White Sox, not the most imposing of lineups, but of course a guy like Frazier can get him. A guy like Abreu can get him. He was hit pretty hard by a pitch tonight, so maybe he takes the night off. Who knows? That'll be definitely interesting, and that would give a nice boost to Porcello. He was hit 12 hours before this game starts, or 14 hours, whatever it may be, since it's an afternoon game. So definitely keep an eye on that. And if you need one more reason to play Porcello, Abreu not being in the lineup would definitely be a huge benefit for him. Yeah, so what do we do here with the can I go on a little tangent here for a second? I know it's only an 8-game slate or a 9-game slate. Can I just throw something out to you?
Oh, always, Dean. That's why everybody loves you on the podcast.
No, this is baseball related too. So I was watching the Red Sox game tonight. It was the 8th inning, top of the 8th. The Red Sox were up 6-4 lead, top of the 8th, and the White Sox were rolling out their best hitters. They were rolling out was it Melky and Abreu and Frazier and maybe Eaton. But, the meat of their order in the 8th inning. But they don't bring out their best pitcher, Craig Kimbrel, because he's the only person that has the mentality to get 3 outs when it says 9 on the scoreboard. This drives me insane. This is one of those baseball things that I think are so stupid. Bring out your closer in the 8th inning, and that's the game. He's going to end the game right there. The best hitters are gone, and I'm not playing results. I was saying this before what happened, and they ended up giving like 3. I think it was Iwa. I can't remember the Japanese pitcher's name. What's his name? Iwakawa?
No.
Doesn't matter. Whoever it was, he got smashed. He gave at least one. Yeah, I think he gave 2 dongs, and the White Sox took the lead, and they won the game. And guess what? Kimbrel never pitched. Why do teams not do this? Like, there's a certain situation where, this guy has the mentality to pitch the 9th. Just throw Kimbrel in the 8th inning, shut it down. Now it's 6-4, bottom of the 8th. And again, I had no DFS implications on this. Just an observation.
You talking about Koji? Was he Uehara?
Yeah, that's who it was.
Yeah, he closed last year. It's not like he's a bad pitcher, but I agree with you, man. Especially in the 8th, up by 2 runs. Even if you get in a slightly bit of trouble, get that closer out there. Like, how many times did we see Rivera come out and throw like almost 2 innings, 1 2/3 and 1 1/3? So I don't know. All right, let's talk bats here.
Well,
Red Sox.
Just to clarify, I'm just suggesting he can pitch 1 inning and he's fine, and somebody else can pitch the 9th because, there's not some kind of magical thing where all of a sudden only certain pitchers can pitch the 9th inning. But fair enough. Let's get back on track, and I guess you want to talk about the Red Sox.
Yeah, but why can't he throw 30 pitches instead of 15? Anyway, Boston 1 through 7. Favorite bats probably being Ortiz, Betts, and Xander here.
Yeah, Bogart's certainly in play. Poppy, we talked about him. Now, I think the question is about Poppy. It's not, is he a good play? It's like, what is his ownership percentage going to be, and what do I do with that? Especially you as the tournament mind. Now, you said Miggy is the spin off of Ortiz, but what about Hanley? Why can't Hanley be the spin?
Hey, I said it like a week ago. Hanley came out and said that, he was feeling good and he was going to start hitting the ball again, and, he's been hitting the ball.
I'm going to say this. Hanley's 3K on FanDuel. I'm not sure what he is on Draft or where he is on DK just yet. I have not explored those sites. But Ortiz is 4.4. Hanley's 3K. Hanley might actually be, just because of the price, he might actually be more popular.
I don't think he'll be more popular.
Well, let's see. Well, if you're paying up for –
It's Ortiz against Shields, man.
Oh, but it's Hanley against Shields, too. Hanley's pretty good. He banged another one out tonight, by the way.
Yeah, I saw that. I unplugged all day, but I caught up tonight.
I saw the same narrative, and I got excited about it too. And Hanley's actually he's shown his power off of late. Of course, we like him better versus lefties, but in Fenway against a home run pitcher like Shields, you got to like them both. And it's kind of a cop out to say make multiple lineups. Have one with Ortiz, one with Hanley, and of course, if you have Hanley, it makes it easier to get a guy like Betts, a guy like Xander Bogaerts. Your big spend, you can go elsewhere, and you can have a lot of fun. Is with the Red Sox.
Ortiz, 60 at bats. He has 12 extra base hits against Shields. He's still the top play.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're talking about the best projection as far as hitters, if money wasn't a thing, if game theory wasn't a thing, it's Poppy, and it's not even close.
Looking at the White Sox. Sorry for yawning there.
Am I boring you?
No, my kid, man. 12 hours at Disney, and you'll get exhausted at 11:30 at night. White Sox bats here. Porcello, not a guy that I'm really going to go out of my way to pick on, but Todd Frazier is a guy that is a streaky hitter. He has home runs in back-to-back games now. Is he a guy you might look at in a tournament?
Yeah, he's fine, and he's super cheap too. The price has yet to adjust as far as his recent output, 3.2K. Fly ball hitter in Fenway Park. I like that combination. So, yeah, sure. I'm all about Todd Frazier.
Any other bats that you want to mention here?
Not really. I mean, look, it's all the guys on Boston, essentially. We didn't mention who else do we not give a head nod to? JBJ. He's certainly in play as well, just to check the lineups. And it is a day game, so maybe one key starter might rest. I'm not really sure how it's going to work, but it's pretty much anybody in Boston for the most part is worth a look.
Let's move it on over to this 5-game late slate. We're going to start with the Mets at the Braves. Matt Harvey, Matt Witzler. Is Matt Witzler an interesting option here? I was looking at the slate, and before you call me crazy, if Cespedes is out, this team is dealing with so many injuries. Is Witzler a guy we could look at? I
had the same exact thought. I have that written down in my notes. Like, Cespedes has a wrist. He went for X-rays. I don't know how serious it is, but I imagine he's not going to play the next day. He has a wrist. He's probably not going to play. Conforto has been dealing in and out with a wrist, and he's been slumping. He's been terrible. David Wright has a neck. He's out for the year. Duda's gone. They got James Loney off the street. That Met team is just awful. And it's not an endorsement of Whistler, but I think he can be okay. And if he's just okay, he's 6.9K on FanDuel. It's not the greatest price. It's not the worst price. He's facing Matt Harvey, who does not position him nicely as far as the win because Harvey's pretty solid. And Harvey actually just faced the Braves, and he gave you we'll talk about him in a second. I'm not terribly enthused about Harvey. I think he's fine, but we'll talk about that. But I don't think Whistler's crazy. I don't think you're nuts. I thought you were going to call me nuts for suggesting maybe Whistler, maybe. And I see it because the Mets. I don't know which one of these offenses are worse. I'm being serious right now. Like if Cespedes is out and Conforto, who knows? We're talking about in the Mets. We're talking about two guys, Neil Walker and Granderson, and that's it, right? Are we really that much afraid of them?
No, I'm not. I'm not worried about Conforto. The one thing that I'm worried about, it has nothing to do with the baseball game. It's supposed to be 90 degrees at first pitch, and that worries me.
Yeah, I don't like that. That's certainly not a positive thing for. They don't call it Hotlanta for a reason, right there. That's it's not an accident. It's not.
It's June in Atlanta. We're gonna get some hot baseball games.
Yeah, but we'll talk about it. It's a 5-game slate. There's not a lot of options, especially if you're stepping down. We'll talk about Leicester in a second, but rostering Leicester basically means I'm not rostering a lot of guys in cores, more specifically guys in Arizona. You can do it. There's a balance, but it's just sort of a give and take. And I'm with you. I think Whistler's kind of interesting. What are your thoughts on Harvey?
Harvey's another guy I think you can look at here. I don't think I'm going to look at him on FanDuel, just because on FanDuel I need the win, especially when I've got guys like Lester pitching. Even though John Lamb is awful, he's still pitching against the Padres. He might win. You never know. And even Lincecum, which we'll talk about here when we get to the last game, like there's pitchers that are going to win tonight, and I just don't know if Harvey's one of those guys. Where's the offense going to come from?
Yeah, Harvey should be fine. He should go 6 or 7. He's turned his season around. He's been better of late. But we know the Braves are not very good against righties, but they don't strike out a ton against righties either. It's kind of a pesky bunch. Outside of Freeman, of course, is more than pesky. He's just legitimately imposing. NCR can hit. It's one of those things, again, consult the lineups. But I think Harvey's fine, but I don't feel like I have to force it in. It's not one of those this guy's facing the Braves. That's my pitcher, and I'm stopping right there. No.
I don't know if we can do that anymore, man. Like the Braves, they're just not striking out a lot. So as much as I want to pick on the Braves, I just don't know. And I've done it over the last week or so, and it's kicked me in the balls. But I just don't know if I could do it. And the one thing that I find so interesting here, AJ Przinsky is just mashing Matt Harvey this year. I think these teams have faced 3 or 4 times now. And of all people, AJ Przinsky is the guy that's hitting Harvey the best on Atlanta.
I was not aware of this. Is that a this season BVP?
I don't know if it's 6 for 8. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but 6 for 8 or something, 6 for 9. But hitting over 600 against Matt Harvey this year is AJ Przinsky.
Well, there you go. I was not aware of that.
I'm not going to play AJ Przinsky. I'm not saying play him. I'm just saying of all people on the Braves, it's AJ Przinsky hitting Matt Harvey. That's what this year has come to.
Yeah. I will say in that same game, if you're looking for a full punt on the other side, well, he's actually back. The Mets bolsters their lineup to some degree. Travis d'Arnaud is back for the Mets, and he's just 2K. He's 2K in FanDuel against Whistler, and I'm fine with that as a full punt. I think he's a decent bet.
I just don't like a lot of bats here. It's really hard to get excited about any of the bats. I agree with you on d'Arnaud. I just.
You want a narrative? I don't mean to cut you off, but the d'Arnaud brothers are in the same game.
That is true. Chase, if he's in that leadoff spot, you never know.
Wow, they're going to try to one-up each other.
Yeah, well, they can one-up each other on the bench. Honestly, outside of d'Arnaud, is there anything that you really like in this game, behind the plate or anywhere?
Like I said, Walker's fine. Walker's switch hitter is much better from the left-hand side. I know he's been better from hitting lefties this year, but traditionally his entire career, he's been best facing righties. So I suppose Walker is definitely worth a look. Pretty fair price on him too. So I don't mind going there as a one-off. Or Granderson, why not? 3.5K leading off on the road. Pretty much locked in for 4 ABs if things are going well. You have the 5th one on layaway. So sure, those guys are interesting. But otherwise, Conforto is really cheap, but I don't know if he's healthy or not with that wrist. He's certainly, he hit a homer, not too long ago, but otherwise he's been struggling and scuffling pretty good. I'm just not enthused about this game.
Yeah, Conforto has 3 hits since June 10th. Even if he hits that 1 home run, I would just chalk it up to variance. I just don't see him being healthy right now. On the other hand, Asdrubal Cabrera, back-to-back home runs and back-to-back games now. Is he juicing? Is this the time we might want to take him before they catch him?
I don't know what Asdrubal's up to these days. Maybe he's hanging out with Roman Reigns. That was a little wrestling joke for your. I'm sure somebody got that out there. But when Roman Reigns was hit for some kind of PEDs or something like that, my timeline just lit up. I didn't realize so many people followed wrestling on my timeline on the Twitter machine. But I don't know what Asdrubal's. Asdrubal's fine. He's okay. He's not a terrible hitter. He's not an elite hitter. He's pretty standard. Maybe one of the better hitting shortstops just because by default. But again, he's not somebody. He's one of those guys like a last man in. Like, oh, I need a shortstop and I have 3.1K left. I like the way I guess I'll take Cabrera. That's how he makes my lineups.
Chicago Cubs, Miami Marlins, John Lester, Wei-Yin Chen. God, I want to fade Lester so bad on this slate, but I just can't do it.
Well, for tournaments or for cash games, because it's a tricky route. We're going to talk about cores in a second. Obviously, Greinke's pitching there, so Colorado's not as sexy. But
for cash, I think you have to play him, right?
I think so. And I think we'll talk about Arizona, but Arizona is the least predictable lineup day in and day out. You never really know who's going to be where, or who's playing and who's not playing. And that's going to dictate the slate. It really is. Guys like O'Brien, if O'Brien cracks it, he's pretty cheap. But yeah, Lester makes the most sense as far as who's going to get to the most fantasy points as far as your pitcher. Salary wasn't a thing. He's pretty obvious as far as the option. The Marlins, middle of the road versus lefties, middle of the road as far as striking out versus lefties, middle of the road as far as ISO, maybe a little bit lower than that. You have their most opposing hitter, Giancarlo Stanton, who I don't want to say he's broken. I thought he was fixed. I was watching him pretty closely. He had that game where he got 3 hits all off breakers. He banged one out, kind of a wall scraper a couple days ago. And I really think at the side, remember he stayed out for like a week or so, and I thought he would get DL'd. And he came back and started playing, wasn't really playing really well. I think he's playing hurt as well. Again, I'm being a doctor here, an amateur doctor, got the armrest and everything on my chair. But it just suggests that something's wrong with him. It doesn't mean he can't run into one. But the Marlins lineup's just not – it's just middle of the road. It's not scary. And, of course, the ballpark is conducive for pitching.
Any thoughts here on Chen? There's a good chance that Rizzo might miss this game. He's dealing with some back issues right now. We know Dexter Fowler, one of the best hitters in this lineup against left-handed pitching. You really have to worry about 2 guys, in my opinion. You got to worry about Ben Zobrist and Chris Bryant. Is that enough to just have you off Chen here?
You remember the Cubs? They were kind of like the Astros last year, where they had a ton of power, but they also struck out a ton. Yeah. They're not striking out versus left-handers this year. It's just not a thing. Like they are, it's happening, but not even close to the degree it was happening before. So there's not a ton of upside. And we've seen before where Chen's had a game where he struck out 8 or 9 on occasion, but generally speaking, Chen kind of gives you the same game. He gives you 6, maybe 7 innings, gives up 3 runs or so, and probably a home run to a right-handed bat. That's basically what he's going to do.
Yeah, I think the thing we need to note, like you said, Cubs are 3rd in WRC plus against left-handed pitching this season. Like, they're not struggling too much against lefties. Now, Rizzo being out of the lineup if he doesn't play and Fowler being on the DL definitely hurts that, but not enough where I'm just going to just lock in Chen. I think he is a guy we can definitely pick on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Bryant, if you can roster Bryant, I think he's a great play at 4.1K. The right-handed stick versus the lefty, it's a little bit pricey. But I think he's definitely worth a spend, definitely worth a look. Aren't you a Marcell Ozuna truther? When you one of the guys like Ozuna, how have you not mentioned him as a one-off possibly? Is that not something you're doing?
We haven't even got to the hitters yet. Of course, I liked Ozuna last year before everybody played him.
As a Marlin fan, again, the Marlins sent Ozuna down because they're just morons. And they were trying to punish him, basically, because they have no clue how to run an organization. And they were trying to trade him in the offseason for basically 50 cents on the dollar, and they got no takers. And now he's potentially an all-star. He's absolutely destroying lefties this year. Again, John Lester, not exactly the lefty you want to pick on, but I think he's really interesting for tournaments. As if we clean up the Cubs, what are our thoughts as far as the Cubs? Well, we know as the catcher, we pretty much can assume it's going to be the grandpa behind the plate. It's going to be David Ross, the perfect personal caddy for John Lester. So you really can't roster him because he doesn't have a stick. He's got a nice glove, but that doesn't help us. Zobrist can certainly run into one. He's pretty reasonable. 3.2K, pretty fair price. Doesn't do anything like one thing particularly well, but he does everything, decent, solid MLB player.
I think Zobrist is an excellent cash game play tonight. I like him against left-handed pitching all the time. Not the greatest ballpark, but definitely a guy I'm going to look at. Honestly, I don't love a lot. Bryant, like you said, if we can fit him in, I feel like he has a lot of upside. Ozuna is a one-off. Martin Prado, I don't want to pick on Lester a lot, but how can we overlook Prado, man? He's just a guy that continues to hit. And, I know you know it. You're a Marlins fan, but this guy's batting over 320 this year.
Yeah, but I mean, not all 320s are created equal. His 320s are all built on singles. That's the problem with him.
Yeah, built on singles and walks. So, like I said, I'm not going to go out of my way to pick on Lester. I like all the righties that you can fit in here for the Cubs. It's just there's a Coors Field game. Like, how many hitters do you really want outside of Coors?
How many lineups do you have to build as far as GPP lineups tomorrow, today, depending on when you're listening to the podcast, until you finally say, all right, Giancarlo, welcome to the squad?
If I build 10, he would probably be on 2.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought process. I mean, I don't want to click it, but I want to click it.
He's too cheap, man.
I'm a glutton, man. I'm a glutton. I can't.
Nobody's going to play him against Lester because of his recent struggles, and he's a guy that has multi-home run upside. I don't care if he's not right or not.
He looks a mess, though. He really does. But
I know he does. I definitely agree with you. But recently, it's started to look a little bit better.
Yeah, and then it feels like he's regressed, but maybe I'm just kind of, overanalyzing because I'm waiting for things to happen. And there was some positive changes, and hopefully he'll break out of it soon enough. And at this price for tournaments and his upside, he's definitely worth considering. But he certainly is frustrating these days.
San Diego at Cincinnati, John Lamb, Christian Frederick. If you want to look at a game outside of Coors, I feel like this is a game we could pivot some bats off of. I don't like Lamb or Frederick. I'm guessing you're the same.
Yeah, I love the ballpark upgrade. San Diego coming out of Baltimore, they had a nice ballpark upgrade as well. Now they're in Cincinnati, losing the DH, but we know Matt Kemp this year. Matt Kemp versus lefties. You ready? 373 ISO. That is a monster number. Monster. Oh, yeah. 193 WRC plus. He's been absolutely annihilating lefties this year. I think and he's a guy that's probably going to go somewhat underowned because people are just going to be paying attention to Arizona. But I think he's a phenomenal player. I don't really know actually. I think Matt Kemp should get some acknowledgement, maybe like 15-20% as far as ownership, but it's definitely justified. Derek Norris behind the plate. I think he's his history versus lefties is definitely positive. I like some of the Padres. Let's pick on Cincinnati. It hasn't worked so well of late, at least recently. And they do have, it's worth noting, we keep talking about how bad that bullpen is. They added Raciel Iglesias, one of their best starting pitchers going into the season. They don't want to burn him out. He's young. There's no reason to push him. They threw him in the bullpen, so he definitely bolsters that for them.
He helps the bullpen, but not enough where I'm going to stop picking on the Reds because of an awful bullpen.
Correct. I agree. And it's also worth noting, like if you see him pitch 2 innings the night before, you can kind of predict, well, okay, maybe he's not going to pitch this night.
Yeah, they're not gonna throw him out there a lot. So here's the thing. If Joey Votto's out of the lineup, I think he'll be back. It was more of a sickness kind of thing on Wednesday. If Joey Votto's out, do you have any interest in Frederick at all?
I dove in a little bit as far as the fan graphs there on Frederick, and lefties have hit him better than righties. It's all small sample sizes. Lefties have hit him better this year than righties, but the one thing that jumped out to me, and it's noteworthy as far as this game, we have, Frederick who pitches at home in San Diego, nice pitcher, friendly ballpark. He's going into Cincinnati. The kids call it the Great American Small Park. A lot of dongs go down there. His home run to fly ball ratio versus righties this year, 3.2%. That doesn't feel sustainable, and it feels like it might get exploited in Cincinnati.
Yeah, and guys like Adam Duvall, who's hitting with massive power this year.
Yep.
I feel like the one thing that we need to know about, and when I said that I'm not interested in Frederick, when I mentioned John Lamb as well, Frederick is a guy that has a really bad control issues. Not with just his wife or girlfriend. He has control issues with throwing the baseball in the strike zone. He walks a ton of hitters.
Which, if that's the case, that kind of turns me off Votto because I don't want my first baseman walking, but Joey Votto is very, very happy to take a walk.
He very much is. Another guy that I don't hate here, Zach Cozart. His price on FanDuel up a little bit, and Trevor Story is so cheap. I think Cozart's an interesting tournament play here.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine there as far as Cozart. I didn't even neglect as far as San Diego. I'm sure this is one of your guys too. I feel like Will Myers is one of your guys.
Will Myers is definitely one of my guys.
Yeah, I think he's certainly. You can have a nice little righty stack there as far as San Diego. Myers, Kemp, Upton's fine. Norris is fine. Jankowski's been leading off of late because John Jay's got a bruise. So and he swipes the bags if he gets on base. And John Lamb is a lefty. Don't let that deceive you. John Lamb is very vulnerable to the stolen base. So Jankowski, if he leads off, and he was 2K last night. Not sure what he was. Not sure what he is tonight. Give me a second. I'll find him. But that is an amazing punt if he's once again 2K and leading off in Cincinnati.
I doubt he leads off. I don't think they're going to lead off a lefty when they can lead off Adam Rosales. Man, it would be the day, Dean. It would be Adam Rosales' day.
Yeah, I mean they did it with Jay. Obviously, Jay's a veteran and Jankowski's not, but and their options are pretty limited. So previously they had Jay starting versus lefties. That's just because their options are slim. It's just certainly worth noting. And even if Jay draws the start, if he's feeling fine and he's cheap, okay, maybe, sure. He's got some speed too. Not a ton of pop, but possible, decent shot of 5 ABs for Cincinnati. Why not?
Any other bats that you like in this game before we move on?
Yeah, I think my favorite one as far as Cincinnati is Duvall. That's my guy.
What about Soros? A little bit of upside there as well.
I don't hate it. He's got to go to the back of the line. He's got to go behind Duvall, but sure, he's worth a look.
Arizona at Colorado, Zach Greinke, Eddie Butler. What do you do with Greinke here at Coors?
You don't pitch him. I don't think you pitch him because he's not a guy that's going to strike out a bunch. If he gives up 3-4 runs, he can't make up the difference in striking out 9 or 10 guys. That's just kind of the way I look. I guess he can't. I don't want to say he can't. I don't want to say definitives. But the likelihood of that happening is slim. He's perfectly content going 7 innings and striking out 3 or 4 guys.
Yeah, first start of Greinke's life here with Arizona came against Colorado. They pounded him for 7 runs, 3 home runs. Pitched against him again in the end of April. Looked a lot better against them, but both those games at Chase Field, this game's at Coors. I see an easy fade for Greinke here.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to push it. Now, if you're on a site where they adjust the price based upon, DK does it sometimes, based upon the ballpark, based upon the opponent. If it's cheap enough and there's not a ton of pitching, maybe. I'm not sure what he is on draft tonight. If you want to pull that up.
16-8.
That's a discount. What he would normally be like around 20-ish, 21, 22.
Yeah, he's usually 24. So Lester's 22-8. Greinke's 16-8. He's the second highest priced pitcher, and Harvey's 15-6.
Harvey just feels so much safer than Greinke.
Yeah, I think I'd go Harvey Lester there. No question about it.
And obviously on FanDuel, Harvey, if you're playing just the night slate, Harvey's already gone. He's already no, actually, never mind. He pitches that night. I don't know why I thought Harvey was playing the day slate for a second. But yeah, I think Harvey's definitely safer.
Arizona, you mentioned it, a few minutes ago. One of the hardest lineups to project every day. One guy that I know will be in the lineup that I absolutely love here, not named Paul Goldschmidt, is Jake Lamb. I feel like Lamb has a ton of upside here in this game. Yeah, and they're going to make you pay for him too. I see he's 4.6K on FanDuel. They usually hike up the price as far as Coors, but that's not a bad price. That's market price. That's not hurricane prices. That's reasonable. That's something I'm willing to pay. I'll do my best to make some room for it because, like you said, he's in a phenomenal spot. I might even am I going to suggest this? Am I going to say that I would probably take Lamb versus Goldie straight up? How about that? Is that nuts? Last year I would have told you were crazy, but this year I'm okay with it. Goldschmidt, not that same guy we've been used to seeing. Now, looking here, let's talk FanDuel first. Peter O'Brien, Trevor Story, Brandon Dury, Nick Hundley, even Phil Gosling. Any of these crack the lineup here. Gosling, when he plays, he usually hits in that top of the order for some weird reason, but these guys all on the cheap end, are these guys you'd look at just because it's Coors?
Gosling is the worst. And I want to name somebody else. I know you mentioned a bunch of guys. And Segura, if he leads off. The thing with Coors, a lot of people say Coors, all the runs, all the home runs, whatever. It's not the greatest. It's great for home runs, sure. But the best thing about Coors is how big it is and how much room there is in the outfield. And it benefits a guy like Segura. It benefits like a guy, wait for it, you ready for this name? If this guy cracks the lineup he might be the most popular guy on the slate on FanDuel specific. Michael Bourne, he hits the 2-hole sometimes for Arizona, and they didn't give him the Coors bump. He's 2.4K. Now I know he's not nearly as fast as he used to be. He used to be a guy that would get 40, 50, 60 stolen bases a year, but he still has better than average wheels. And if he hits one ball in the gap, it usually goes to the wall, and that's a triple automatically. I mean, how do you not play Michael Bourne if he's batting? It's a crazy sentence to suggest 2016. And then there's Ricky Weeks. Like, where are these guys? They have the Bill and Ted's phone booth. I don't know where they're getting these people from, but Ricky Weeks is still playing baseball in 2016, and sometimes he bats second. Sometimes he bats cleanup. I think they have like a boggle machine in the Arizona dugout where they just shake the names up, and whoever comes out, all right, you're playing second, you're playing third, and that's just how they do it. Drury's too cheap if he draws a spot in the lineup. Peter O'Brien has got ridiculous power. He's another guy. He's another guy in that Joey Gallo mold where he's going to strike out. He's going to make a lot of outs, but when he hits it, it's going to go a long way. And then there's Yasmani Tomas. There's just so many options, and it's just hard to evaluate. Basically, whoever cracks the top 6 or so for Arizona is going to be very much in play. Some really, really good plays, some nice plays that are just a little bit too expensive to make everything work, but that's the lineup we're all monitoring tomorrow.
Colorado here against Greinke. Anything that you really want to, pick on? It is Coors Field, but it's still Zach Greinke.
I'm probably going to pass. Maybe a one-off if you want, like a Story. We talk about the shortstop, not a ton of opportunity cost. And we know Story's ability to bang out some homers. He strikes out a ton as well, but we don't care. If he just connects with that one homer, sure, that pays off his salary and then some. So I don't mind him. And he's too cheap, just not considering the opponent, not considering the Army's facing, but 3.1K in Coors Field. Just that right there is appealing enough. And what does he have, 16, 17, 18 home runs in the season, something like that, closing on 20. Blackmon and Gonzalez, I'm probably not going to play. I get it if you are, but I'm probably not going to go there. But I think this game is all about Arizona.
I think Colorado would be an excellent tournament stack. Everybody's going to stack Arizona. Nobody's going to pay up for Colorado. Blackmon, a guy that I would like as a one-off. He has multi-hits in 5 of his last 8 games, which is always nice. Not going to go out of my way to fit him into lineups, but if I had to pick one-off play outside of Story, because Story I feel like is a guy that's going to be popular in cash games just because of his price, I feel like you can definitely look at Blackmon. I like the Colorado stack a ton here tonight just because I think it's going to be under-owned.
Well, I mean, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I'm playing a lot more GPPs this year, but I come from a cash game perspective, and you have the GPP perspective, and the first thing that jumps out is, you got to play all the Arizona guys. But the ownership, if you're going to play the ownership game, the Arizona guys will probably be, generally speaking, 3x, 4x the ownership of the guys in Colorado.
I definitely agree with that. Let's swing it on over to the last game of the night. Oakland at Los Angeles, the Angels and the Athletics here. Kendall, big Graveman. Tim, I'm back in baseball. Lincecum. Anything that interests you here? Just because, honestly, both these pitchers stink.
Big time, Timmy Jim. Both these pitchers stink, and neither one of these teams have a good offense, but neither one of these teams strike out. So I'm going to ask you this. Let me set the over-under at 7.5. Combined strikeouts for Lincecum and Graveman. That's probably too high. 6.5.
I would take the under. Graveman doesn't strike anybody out. Lincecum's not going to strike anybody out. 6.5. For these two pitchers, I would take the under.
6.5 combined. You're taking the under.
Yeah, they had 6 last game like a week ago.
And it's going to be 6.5. We're not expecting a lot of strikeouts, but I don't expect a ton of runs either because these offenses stink. We've established these pitchers are not going to be striking the hitters out. Okay, so the hitters are going to be putting the bat in the ball, but we don't think they're going to be putting it over the plate, over the fence, do we? Like, not really.
No, maybe marine layer, it's just not a lot to love in this game. Like, even Chris Davis, one guy, the crush with the K, Davis, would be the one guy that I'm worried about. Mike Trout, obviously, Cole Calhoun, Albert Pujols dealing with a hamstring injury. Danny Valencia has some pop this year.
Sure.
Those 4 guys, and then outside of that, it's like, okay, So, honestly, on a site, if you really need salary relief, now on Fantasy Draft, we already mentioned that it's going to be pretty easy to get in Harvey and Lester, but I don't mind Tim Lincecum. I feel like what he did against Oakland, last week is the same type of performance that we're going to get out of him here.
Yeah, I think he goes 6 or so, give or take. He's probably not going to go too long. He's not going to throw 110 pitches. Not going to strike a lot of guys out, but I think he keeps the ball in the park. He doesn't really get beat up, and maybe strikes out 3 guys and maybe grabs a win. I'm expecting a 4-3 kind of game. Just nothing, not much to see here. Maybe Trout gets one off. I'm sure it's certainly possible. No, that's not possible because Trout's his teammate. Maybe a guy like Valencia. That would be amazing if somehow Trout. I don't foresee that happening, but maybe Valencia. Maybe Valencia gets to him. He can give up a dong, sure, but not exactly. I don't predict a clean slate, but I think he's okay. I think he's fine, but he's not somebody I'm excited about rostering. As an SP2, if you want to make everything else work, maybe. But if you're going to force me to pick amongst these 2 guys, we know the upside's not very high on either. I'm taking big time Timmy Jim.
I don't like Graveman at all, so I would definitely agree with you at Lincecum. All right.
Did you see? I don't mean to cut you off, but did you see the battle of like the 18th century jobs a week ago or so? Was Graveman versus Shoemaker?
Oh man.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
I thought that was worth mentioning.
You're fine. Let's play some home run derby. This slate, Oakland and Los Angeles. I mentioned the bats you want to target: Chris Davis, Cole Calhoun, Danny Valencia, Mike Trout.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, maybe I want to say Simeon, but no, probably not even Simeon. Okay, we're playing home run. Do I get the bat first?
I'll let you bat first. We can use any batter in any game except for Coors.
Oh, I can't pick Michael Bourne for the inside the Parker?
You cannot.
Okay. What? But if I say that, I mean, I should get.
Listen, if Michael Bourne hits an inside the home run or inside the park home run, I'll give you a bonus point.
Thank you. As if you're keeping score.
I actually am. I have an Excel sheet.
How we doing? How's the visiting team doing?
Visiting team, I think, is down by like 6, but I haven't updated the last like 3 days.
So, I mean, is it cheating just taking Big Papi? Is that fair, or how does that work? Is it just like frowned upon? Like, wow, we're really making a bold statement there.
No, I'll let you take Papi. That's fine.
All right.
Let's see. You're gonna take Papi. I'm gonna take. I'm telling you, my one off for Papi is Miguel. I'll take Miggy.
All right. I'll see the Miggy and raise you. Oh, Adam Duvall. Like I said, that Friedrich home run, the fly ball rate, 3.2% versus righties in San Diego. He's not going to be saved in Cincinnati. Duvall's taking him yard.
I'm going to go Chris Bryant in an awful ballpark. He's still going to hit it out.
Oh, man. Yeah, he can crush it. That's a good pick. All right. Give me the boomstick. Give me Nelson Cruz.
Damn it. I forgot about Nelson Cruz. I'm gonna one up you here. I'm gonna go Lee in that same game.
Oh wow, Daeho Lee, nice call.
Like that? I'm gonna let you have Nelson Cruz, who obviously I love him for a home run here, but yeah, I'm gonna go Lee. All right, so the only pitcher I'm gonna take off the board here is Lester. So if you had to pick one pitcher at the end of the day to pick up a win, not named John Lester, who would you have here?
Well, I mean, is it cheating by saying Porcello?
No. I'll let you have Porcello.
I mean, Porcello seems like the easy answer, doesn't it?
Yeah, if that's what you want to go with.
I feel you're quietly judging me. You're like, well, way to be bold there, Dean.
Well, mine's going to
you know what? Big time Timmy Jim. He grabs a win. There at home, his debut for the Angels. Lincecum gets the W.
I'm going to go – oh, my God. This pains me so bad. I'm going to go Ricky Nolasco.
Yes, I love it. That was impressive.
Yeah, it's giving me heartburn already, and we haven't even started yet.
Rightfully so. You should not feel comfortable about that.
Probably going to have heartburn because I had dinner at like 10 o'clock. But anyway, all right. So that's going to wrap it up here for the slate. Make sure you guys check out fantasydraft.com, our sponsor. If you guys enjoyed the podcast Monday through Friday, check them out. Use promo code Grinders. That way you get incentives here at Roto Grinders for Fantasy Draft for free for a year, and you get a 100% deposit bonus. Dean, I saw that you're doing some coaching now.
Oh, yeah. I'm super pumped. RG is rolling out coaching, and they asked me to join it. I'm super excited. I have a teaching background, and before I did DFS, I was teaching, not DFS necessarily, but I'm very excited to work with some students. I think it's going to be good times.
If you guys have any interest in that, contact Dean through the Roto Grinders site, and I'm sure you can get a hold of him on Twitter, however you want to get a hold of him. Dean will definitely answer any questions about that. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, my friend?
Holler.
All right, that's going to wrap it up here. We'll be back tomorrow on Friday with Pepsi 7 joining us. If I don't win anything tonight, I hope it's you guys. Good luck in your contest, and we'll see you then.
Why not me?